What's going on, everybody? What's going on, everyone? Talks with Kenny here today. We'll be not reacting, but we'll be analyzing a video from Rob Woodson. All right, and some of you guys may or may not know who this guy is. Robert Woodson appeared in, he went viral for appearing at Dr. Phil, and he talks about he was against reparations. I did a video on him, and I believe if we had more black people, like black Americans like him, like in our elderly generation, I think the black community will be in a different spot that it is today, right? And I'm doing some housekeeping as I'm waiting for more people to come in. So I put an interesting book today. It's called When Race Trumps Merit. And pretty much this is what's going to be the source, kind of the core tenets of this video, is that how the pursuit of equity sacrifices excellence and destroys beauty and threatens lives, right? Because we have gone into this culture of race referencing, right? And it's not about, hey, what this person does as an individual and we should judge that individual. It's no, you're a representative of the collective. Therefore, if you're Daniel Penny and you decided to hold a man in a chokehold, and the man was still alive after the chokehold, based on what I saw, but the fact that a black man died at the hands of a white guy, we're going after him. Even though there was 3 people restraining him, none of the other 2 getting prosecuted because one looked like he was Hispanic, the other guy looked like he was black. But they prosecute the white guy because why? If it's a particular narrative that, white people are out to get black people, right? But hey, I digress. I don't want to spend any more time. I want to kind of get into the video. So let's get into it. This is the video from Robert Woodson, Race in America and Economics. Let's get into the video. So drowned out intro.
I'm Bob Woodson, president of the Woodson Center. I'm here to talk about race and economics. These 2 issues in America did not converge until the 1960s, with some pretty devastating effects that I'll discuss in my remarks. But the character of any nation or any individual is determined by how we treat the least of us. In America, the moral barometer is how we've treated blacks in America and also low-income people. Just a little history of that. Prior to the 1960s, the responsibility for caring for those who are in need in various ethnic groups and racial groups was the responsibility of private institutions within those groups.
I agree with that statement because as before, like a lot of people don't know this, is that before the government intervened into like private life and started creating government programs, it used to be like you was able to buy your health insurance through your associative groups, right? Like Freemasons and all the, like, these are where these things came from. Like you was able to get insurance through your community. You guys all pitched in, and then y'all was able to bargain together like a community union. And y'all all say, hey, we want healthcare. This is the people in our association. Give us a rate and we'll pay a certain amount, right? It was more communal. And I think that this is the kind of thing that Robert Woodson will hint at, is the fact that as a culture, as a unit, we are becoming too almost decentralized in a way. We're almost becoming too much to ourselves, right? We're becoming almost too individualistic in a sense, right? And I think that sense of communal values that we have lost is what's causing a lot of issues we have in our culture, right? Shared culture. I talked about this a lot, is that since we don't share a shared culture anymore, people are more distrusting of each other, right? And you can say this is a concept of multiculturalism, is the fact that you can't have multiple cultures within a society, is because they all have conflicts of interest and they'll all be kind of fighting to exert dominance. Where if you're coming in America, I believe you should assimilate to American culture, right? Because America has culture. It has its principles and values because it gives you a common goal, a common alignment of values, right? A shared culture. And if you have a shared culture, you're more trusting of your citizens. It builds camaraderie. It builds trust, loyalty, and a sense of belonging in a country. This is why you get this sense that when we reference people by race, is because people are starting to mix their race with their culture, allegedly, right? If you're a Black American, there's certain traits you're supposed to act and behave a certain way, because that's what a Black person is. instead of just saying, hey, I'm an American. Americans come and talk this way. Americans talk that way. We don't see each other like that. We don't see each other as one nation, right? We see each other as a group within a nation, and this was happening in America today. And I just wanted to speak to that. Let's get back into the video.
Immigrants coming from the backwaters of Eastern and Southern Europe, they came here. The first requirement was to become acculturated, and also they must be assimilated. And assimilation meant they had to learn the language and learn the customs, and acculturation, they had to learn the customs.
And that's true for any nation, not just America. And I don't understand why the left give America such a hard time when it demands its immigrants to assimilate to our culture. This is why we wait 5 years before someone can send an application to become an American citizen, because that gives them time to become acclimated in American culture, understand our way of life, how we do things here, how our system works, right? So they can have a better understanding of signing up before they become citizens, right? And it seemed like one of the hurdles that we have is that I think as America, we cater too much to immigrants in a way, right? I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying from a sovereign nation point of view, you can't have a group of people who don't understand or don't speak the national language in a country, because then it'll take too much work for the government to rework and correct these issues and accommodate these people. Because then, like for instance, in Miami, Hispanic people, they still speak Spanish. They're not allowed them know how to speak English properly unless they're born here or whatever. But those who immigrate here, they have a hard time assimilating to Spanish, because in Florida they have a place called not Little Haiti, but Little Havana, Hialeah Gardens, and these are predominantly Hispanic populations. And they know, hey, when someone immigrates there, they have a place. Oh, let me go to Hialeah, where everything is Spanish. There's certain things in Spanish. It's like it's like a little Hispanic country within the state of Florida. So these people can get away with not having to learn English. But the trade-off is, since they don't assimilate to the culture, they don't assimilate to the country, their economic prospects are limited because they only can speak in Spanish. Right? Now, Hispanic people can get away with not learning English in Hialeah, in Florida, but that limits them. They can never leave the state of Florida, because other states, they're like, oh, I don't know who speaks English, who don't. So they tend to pigeonhole themselves in one location, and that limits your economic opportunities. Because if you want to make a high paying job in America, it's not likely it will be a Spanish speaking position. It's likely you have to learn how to speak English, unless it's a field or industry that caters a lot to the Latin American culture or Latin America in general. But hey, I digress. I didn't want to talk too much, so let's get back into the video.
Of the country as well. Well, the large cities proved to be a melting pot, and a place of assimilation took place, and the civic institutions within these communities, these cities, did a great job of producing Americans out of these immigrants. In the Black community, the same process emerged, that even under segregation and discrimination, there was a rich array of civic institutions, churches, Masonic organizations that rose up within the groups to provide for those in need. One of the largest was in Philadelphia during Free Blacks in 1789, Mother Bethel Church. But even among Free Blacks who sought assistance from their church, there were high moral standards for people who qualified for aid. You couldn't get assistance if your poverty or your situation was caused by your own slothfulness or immorality.
And this is where you start seeing some of the liberal policies and how it negatively affected the Black community. Because he was giving a timeline of how in the 1700s, right, Black community was more reliant on its communities, the church, right? And you also see a trend in America as a whole as well, is that we're in this time, I think we're the least religious people in America history right now, right? Right, we have a larger share of people who don't believe in God, right? And you see that we have higher rates of depression. We struggle with satisfaction, happiness. This is why Marx said something. Karl Marx, the father of communism, he made a note about how atheism is you're already halfway near communism, is because since you don't believe in God, you don't believe in meaning almost, right? And you look for that meaning in something else. Like, end of the day, I don't think you can remove that sense of, hey, meaning. You replace it with something. And this is where you get a lot of people who are so trusting of the government, the state. Oh, our benevolent leaders will come and save us, right? And they don't have no more scrutiny over the governmental powers because they think, hey, our rights come from the government, not from an entity outside the government, right? That's the whole point of the Constitution. We all men are created equal by our creators. These rights are endowed by our creators. This is why they want people to be more circular. That's one of the Marxist theologies or belief system that they're trying to push on our kids, and us as a culture as well. So then welfare, which is where he's trying to go in this discussion, is trying to incentivize us to be dependent on the government. And that's always been the case that conservatives has put forth for why they're so anti-welfare. And in my view, as a middle ground, I'll say, hey, these things should be temporary. And he's right. There should be a moral standard for this stuff. Hey, are you handicapped? Okay, you could be on welfare. Oh, you seem to be a very healthy adult. I think you should work. I don't think we should be incentivizing you to be lazy. We shouldn't be incentivizing you to be comfortable. And this is the common critique against welfare, that liberals participate and condition the black people to feel comfortable in. Because I remember I watched a video where a black person, when they first rolled out in the 1960s, when they first rolled out this welfare program and stuff, they actively was trying to recruit black people to go on welfare. And I remember I saw a clip, the video of the guy was saying, hey, we're no one's pet. You ain't gonna just give me money and take care of me like I'm someone's pet. And that was the attitude that black community used to have. And I think the fact that we let these liberal social scientists condition black culture, convince black people to accept or deny a culture that's actually economically productive for them, is what led us to where we are today. But I digress. Let's get back into the video.
So high standards were always required for those receiving aid. And this continued up until the 1930s with the crash of the stock market. Pressure mounted on these institutions so they could not continue to provide for their people. And so government intervened for the first time in the economy on behalf of low-income people and people who are struggling. But intervention was largely government to individuals. And so as a result, these civic institutions pretty much stayed intact. Until the 1960s, this all changed. For the black community, up until 1965, 85% of all households had a man and a woman raising children. But a lot of that changed in the 60s after the Voting Rights Act passed, and we had the Watts riots occurred. And Lyndon Johnson announced his war on poverty.
And before he goes on with the war on poverty point, the war on poverty was marketed as hey, we're going to solve poverty in the black community. Like he said, 85% of kids had a father in the home, right? And this was a lot of birth conservatives talk about this. Alan West talks about this, is how this was the beginning of an incentive structure where the woman, the black woman, was incentivized to be like, hey, be dependent on the government, not on your husband. And this is a big, it branches off a whole can of words, is that higher rates of crime are associated with being raised by a single mother, right? Also, more propensity to be in poverty, right? Because end of the day, the government, instead of trying to aid people to be self-sufficient, it was trying to help people directly by directly interfering and giving monetary incentives to people who are not in a self-sustaining position, right? And especially when they put the stipulation that, oh, you can't have a man in the house, right? It put this false idea or this idea, like you essentially incentivizing a certain behavior. Say, hey, you can get cash and prizes if you do a certain thing. And this is the conditioning that I'm talking about that the black community has been given. But hey, I digress. Let's get back into the video.
As a result of these events, liberal social scientists at Columbia University School of Social Work, Clowen and Piven, came up with this social construct that says that the black community if we want to really emphasize the contradictions of capitalism, then one of the ways that we can do that is to insist that blacks, welfare to blacks, be given as reparations.
And they go reparations again. Cash and prizes. Hey, you can have something for nothing, right? This false idea. And this was, I think, the beginning of the end, because you see how he mentioned social scientists. They conditioned black culture a particular way because black culture was very resistant. The black community in the 1960s was very resistant to this idea that you can get something for nothing, right? And when they say, hey, we want to eliminate the connection from work and income, essentially what they're saying is, hey, we don't want you to be independently. We don't want you to have this idea of you can independently create income for yourself. We want you to think that wealth or income is handed down from the government, right? It's a sense of learned helplessness. And this is what social scientists, liberal social scientists, had conditioned the black folk to think. That, oh, because of your skin color, you can't do nothing. Oh, you failed at math. It's not because of your fault. It's because the racist teachers are not teaching you math in a way that you can understand. They put this idea that you can't do something for yourself. And this is why I like this message of do for self. Hey, government, get out of my way. Hey, government, you're supposed to be a referee. Not supposed to be someone who's active, have an active role in my life. Because at the end of the day, the government is just wanting to justify its own power. And the one way it can justify its own power is, hey, I need you to need me. And in return, I'll do something on your behalf. This is why you got all these black people right now mad at me. I did a video on the $1.2 million cash reparations thing. And they're getting mad. Oh, we deserve this. We're entitled to this. Because the liberal social scientists has succeeded in eliminating the understanding that men don't work, men don't eat. Right? Back in the day, before modern technology, if you didn't farm, plant, and harvest and take care of your fields, you knew you will not have any food at the end of it. This is natural law. You can't have something for nothing. You have to give something in exchange for a service or product that you want. And this is what money represents. And if you just get money for nothing, you just cause what? Inflation. But, people don't care because they feel like, hey, I'm entitled to this stuff. And this is another conflation that liberals have put into the mind of America as a whole, is that entitlements are rights. Oh, I feel entitled to free healthcare. Healthcare is not a right, because at the end of the day, it's a service that's given to you by another individual. An entitlement is, hey, you need the consent of someone else to get it. A right is something you can do independent of anyone's consent. If I want to talk, I can talk freely. I can say anything I want, because at the end of the day, regardless if you think I should speak or shouldn't speak, I could still do my action because it's in my full control. That's a right. As long as you don't restrict my ability to do what I feel like I want to do, that's a right. Just like it's not a right for someone to be like, oh, you can't misgender me. Well, you can't control what comes out of my mouth. Compelled speech is an entitlement. That's not a right, because you're forcing me to say something against my own will. It's a very simple, I think, standard and paradigm that I have about rights and entitlements. But hey, I digress. Let's get back into it.
And at the time, public aid to blacks was really stigmatized in the black community. To overcome that stigmatization, the social scientists at the time began to promote the notion that the nuclear family was Eurocentric and therefore racist.
And you see how the social scientists condition the black people, right? Or maybe America as a whole as well. Maybe I could be wrong about this. Is that the idea of that this is where I was talking about, where the liberals conditioned the black Americans to perceive race and culture as one thing instead of seeing them as two separate things. Just because me and you are black doesn't mean we come from the same culture. Right. But in America, that's what that's what the liberal scientists or the liberal social scientists succeeded in doing, is that they was able to mix race and culture together and say, hey, a nuclear family isn't a black thing to do. Black people are supposed to be raised by single mothers. That's what they could say now. Wait, hold on. Oops, something just happened to my stuff. What? That is insane. What just happened? Hold on a sec. This is ridiculous. Oh boy. Give me one sec. Oh my God. Oh.
They concluded that if we can separate work from income and replace it with welfare, it would make the fathers redundant in homes. Well, this social construct was supported by the Black Power movement that saw the nuclear family too as Eurocentric. Also, welfare policies were destigmatized. It was considered reparations. But just having a social policy alone was not enough. The federal government, through the opportunity offices for the poverty programs, actually opened government offices and actively recruited Blacks into the welfare system. Privacy laws, suits were filed so that women who were pregnant out of wedlock no longer had to declare paternity as a condition of them getting welfare. And so it's the
Wow, that's crazy. So to eliminate the condition of having a man in the house, this is what I'm talking about. Like when we say they incentivized single motherhood, like you're essentially incentivizing, hey, women, pick the government. Like pick the government over your husband. You don't need a man, you need us. We're the ones that's gonna come and save you. And this is just a bad idea going south. And I know I'm not like really putting eye contact. It's just for some reason my soundboard just wrecked on me. I don't know why, but that's some craziness to me. Like the idea that, hey, we want you to go down a particular path, and this is what we're like. This is what Black conservatives always talk about, right? Oh, sorry about this. Nope. Messing this up. What's the hell's going on with my stuff? Sorry about this, guys. Oh my God. Why did you crash today? It's like ridiculous. Okay. Sorry, bear with me here. Oh. Yeah, sorry about that crash. Let's see. Okay, we're back. Okay, so my stuff is working again. Sorry about that. So I lost my train of thought because I was trying to do this, so I'll just jump right back into the video.
It's the combination of the events that you saw the explosion of welfare. People, millions began to flow into the welfare system. The liberal social scientists concluded that if we could only bankrupt our cities,
Wow.
then the federal government would be compelled to change how we address poverty by having income redistribution. So it was really socialist aims at the time, and the Black community was the agent through which they would promote this dramatic change. And as a consequence, millions of Blacks flowed into the welfare system at a time in New York when the unemployment rate for Black men was under 4%.
Wow.
And so what was predicted actually came true. There was an explosion of out-of-wedlock births. And so...
Yeah, and during that time, Thomas Sowell was speaking heavily against this. Like, hey, you don't have to give women, you don't have to say women go become single mothers. You just have to subsidize it. And that's what Thomas Sowell pointed out in the 80s when this stuff was going on. Is like, hey, you're incentivizing a certain behavior. You don't think that logically a woman's going to sit back and say, what's easier, getting direct payments from the government or dealing with this man? Maybe I'll just take my chance with the government. I'll get more benefits. I get more controls. I get all these cash and prizes. And they were like, oh, no, we're just here to help. We're just here to help. Right. And then I like how he phrased the fact that, hey, this was socialism. This is a way to justify government intervention. They make policies, bankrupt, right? We're dealing with something similar right now. Everyone's claiming that Biden's trying to do a similar thing. The Great Reset, destroy the economy, whatever, and then you can rebuild it in your image of what it should be. Destructionist creation, like destructionist policy, pretty much. Like, hey, destroy and then recreate in your own image. And we're seeing this play out right now in our economy. right? As much as Biden think, oh, we're trying to keep the economy alive, K-shaped recovery. No, these great reset guys, they just want to recreate the world in their image. Hey, let's create a new system on top of this because this old system we believe is inadequate. And this is why they're so resistant to people saying, hey, like, do what's best for the American people. They're like, no, we want to do best for globalism. Let's build one world economy type of thing. And this is why they don't like people having pride in themselves as individuals. They just want you to be part of a cog in a machine. Right. And this is why I think Marxism was so popular in the black community, is because, this is why Marxism was so popular in the black community, because it sowed this conflict. Oh, you must destroy the old order to bring in a new one. You can't reform the system. You have to completely create a new one. You're going to throw the baby with the bathwater. To me, I'm a reformist. Hey, let's reform the country incrementally and fix the problems as we go along. But for Marxists and for a lot of black Americans, they think that's too slow, right? They rather, hey, no, we need it now. And this is how they go into this case of, hey, I'm trying to destroy. Appreciate you coming in, Base Zoomer. Howdy, I'm late, but I'm here. I appreciate you for watching. Let's get back into the video, guys.
That number, black Americans, the black family formation rates went from 85% to out of wedlock births to 70%.
Yep.
And all the accompanying social pathology followed: dropout rates, violence, disintegration of families. All of these pathologies occurred at one time in the black community. And in 73, New York City did in fact go bankrupt because of the explosion of welfare. And this decline was used by the left to justify racial antagonism. They said now that these changes that are occurring were a direct result of racial discrimination. 1619.
Oh boy, before he gets into 1619, I like the wisdom that he speaks with, right? Because he lived through this stuff. It ain't just, I'm talking from historical readings, or no, he personally watched as he saw the community, the black community, come from a good cultural standing, right? With values and principles that made them strive and make them the fastest rising racial group in America, to where it became, where it's stagnating to the point where now it's barely struggling to make it in education. It's barely able to fight. It's hard for black Americans today to, even from a cultural perspective, to achieve academically and economically because of the culture that we're raised in today. We're raised by single moms. We don't have a shared community. We don't have shared values. We have this idea that we're owed something. We believe that racial disparities is not due to us as a community making different decisions from other communities. It's due to our race, our skin color. Oh, I'm black. We're born poor. We have every disadvantage in the book. It's because of systematic racism that we can't make it in this country. And I think that's malarkey. This is why I'm so against CRT. This is why I think CRT is trash. Get that issue away from my kids, because CRT is proven to affect the self-esteem of children, especially black ones. It sets this expectation of, hey, there's no point of me trying to achieve in this country because this country is against me because of the color of my skin. This is why the left tries to condition America and black people so heavily to associate race and culture as one thing. Because I could be black, but I can learn stuff from Trump. I can learn stuff from a white person, right? This is why they focus so hard on representation. You need people that look like you, because they think, hey, you can't learn a behavior that is not that if someone of your race is not doing that behavior. Oh, showing on time is a white people thing. Oh, a nuclear family is a white behavior. This is how critical race theory teaches kids to think, to view their skin color as some barriers. Oh, you can't do that. You're a black man. Oh, you can't vote. Oh, you can't vote Republican. You're a black man. Right? Literally linking your ability to achieve to your skin color. This is the point of critical race theory. And this is what we were taught from. This is what the black community was taught by these liberal social scientists. And you reach it to its conclusion. If black people have different outcomes from white people, it's due to racism. Not due to the fact that the black community has done different behaviors from another community, right? The Asian community is 70% married. And the black community is 70% single motherhood. Yet the Asian community has a different outcome from us. They don't want you to say, oh, it's because of different behaviors. Oh, Asians stay married together, and married people are less proponent to be in poverty. They're less likely to be in poverty because most of them are married. While since the black community is mostly single, right, 70% are born to single mothers, they're more likely to be poor. They don't want to attribute it to behavior and decision makings of the community. They want to attribute, oh, their race. It's because of racism. This is why this outcome has happened, right? They want us to blame things on imaginary problems and put us in a position where, hey, the liberal tell a black person or a minority, hey, you can't do nothing about it. This is how this country is. But we can do something for you on your behalf. But you're helpless. It's learned helplessness. CRT is learned helplessness. If you're a minority group, they're saying, hey, the system is making you helpless. You can do nothing for yourself in this country. And this is the type of values and beliefs that I'm fighting against with these videos, or at least I'm trying. But hey, I digress. I'm gonna continue in the video.
Came along in August of 2019. This was really the fulfillment of the policies that started in the 60s. That the 1619 Project from the New York Times began to look at the problems facing Black America today, the out of wedlock births, the explosion of black on black crime.
And you see how it all ties together? They'll do something and say, hey, we're trying to help the black community. That policy, welfare state, incentivizes the black community to do a certain decision or outcome, incentivize those bad behaviors, those bad outcomes that set the black people up for more poverty, higher rates of crime, to perform less in academics because the kids don't have both their parents in the house, so they're more likely to fall influence to outside culture. Then in 20, 40 years, they'll come back and say, oh, it's because of racism that this is happening, right? Not realizing that their policies has incentivized a group of people to go down a path that negatively, I can't speak today, guys. Sorry about that. Bruh. I can't speak today. Negatively affect them. And it's like to me, it's mind boggling, right? In the war on poverty, if you look back, the poverty rates for the black is still the same. So what war on poverty did you do? All you did was, hey, I make people comfortable in poverty. That's all the welfare state did. In my view, the war on poverty was just a way of, hey, we want these people to be dependent on the government. That's the only way this stuff makes sense. Because why keep pushing for more welfare? And the government don't have a good incentive structure to be efficient with the funding. Because in a day, if you don't use all your funding in the government, budget cuts, you're likely to get budget cuts. So the government's incentivized to get as much people to stay on welfare as possible. So they're not actually incentivizing people on welfare to do better for themselves or to actually achieve economically. All they've done is, hey, we want you to be comfortable in this poverty. And then when they need votes or they're running against the Republicans, they just say, hey, we're probably going to take away your welfare. Basically having leverage over a group of people. And this is why black women are the most loyal Democratic voters, because they benefit the most from a racial component. Like from a usage component, there's a higher percentage of black people on welfare than the percentage of white people on welfare. From an absolute sense, yes, there's more white people on welfare than any other group of people just because they're the biggest. But if you look at the percentages, it's like 26% of white people are on welfare, while there's like 40 to 36% of black people on welfare. Black people as a racial group benefit more from welfare. And most of them are what? Women, black women. And to me, it makes perfect sense why the black woman is so loyal to the Democratic Party. And this is why you see black men are starting to trend more towards the Republican Party, because we're starting to realize, hey, we don't get anything from the Democratic Party. At least if I'm not getting anything, at least I go to the Republican Party where they'll lower the taxes for me and I'm more incentivized to create opportunities for myself. Government, get out of my way. That's the ethos right now. And he believes it's a crisis of values, and I agree with him. It is a crisis of values. But hey, I digress. Let's get back into the video.
More blacks were killed in 1 year by other blacks than were killed in 40 years under lynchings in the South. In other words, black Americans, neighborhoods had a 9/11 every 6 months. And so the architects of 1619 associated those changes with a legacy of slavery and discrimination. And they said because the real birthday of America is 1619, that was a date that in Jamestown, 20 African slaves arrived. And so America should be defined not from 1776, but 1619 at the arrival of slavery. And America.
That's crazy. And I agree with what he's saying here is that we get this, like 1619 is a revisionist left wing revisionist point of history where they claim that America was really founded on the Mayflower. Was it the Mayflower when it came in 1619, right? But what they don't tell you is that in 1620 there was a black slave owner called Anthony Johnson. So if their idea is that, hey, America was founded on slavery and racism, then explain to me how the first slave owner was a black man. Like explain that to me. Like I don't understand. I don't understand how like you can reconcile those 2 points. If 1619 was, oh, this is the real founding of America, and America was founded on racism and slavery, then explain to me, sorry, what the hell just happened to my screen? Oh, yeah. Yo, I'm telling you, something's going on with my screen. So explain to me how, now I lost my train of thought because of this damn thing. I digress. Let's get back into the video. I'm sure it'll come to me once I play the video.
Is incurably racist and all.
Yeah. So the point I was trying to say is that if there was a black slave owner in 1620, a year after you said the America was founded on racism, how do you explain that a black man was able to own slaves? That kind of destroys your little narrative there. And the person who wrote it was just a journalist. It wasn't a true historian. And most of it was just due to personal, like her personal story. It wasn't really explaining black history in a general sense, in my view. At the end of the day, you saying America was founded on 1619 is like me saying Tesla was founded on the year that Elon Musk was born. Like, it makes no sense. The country was founded in 1776. America was America in 1776, not 1619. 1619, we were just a colony from Europe, England, sorry. So I don't understand where like they're able to make this connection, but I think Robert will explain it a lot better than I just did.
White people are villains and therefore to be punished, and all blacks are victims to be compensated.
Yep.
And that became.
This is why you never hear anything about black slave owners, even though black slave owners exist, and a large percentages of them were in Louisiana. So whenever you hear the reparations talk, you ever think people are thinking about, oh, what about the black people that own slaves? You never hear that conversation. It's always, oh no, the white people are the oppressors and the black people are the victims. And this is race in America today. This is why I'm so against race referencing. If it was up to me, we'll eliminate race referencing altogether. Everyone's an American, either an American or not. That's all we care about. Because it'll eliminate a lot of this divide that we're having in our country right now. But I digress.
The dominant narrative that replaced the civil rights proposition that we should be judged by the content of our character, not the color of our skin, but that has now been replaced with intersectionality and race grievance is the primary definition of what social activists are engaged in today. And so what we at the Woodson Center are doing with our 1776 campaign, what we're doing with the 1776 campaign is we're challenging this notion that America should be defined by its birth defect of slavery, but America should be defined by its promise of equal opportunity. And what we're doing.
I agree with that. Like, we should be basing that's the American dream, right? The American value that everyone has an opportunity to try. That's the only guarantee you have in this country. That's why I said the government in America should operate like a referee, right? Not shouldn't be giving cash and prizes, trying to be a game master. Oh, I want to equalize no, you can't do that. That you affect other people's outcome. If an Asian person on average is smarter than black people, you can't artificially say, hey, let's lower his score because he's Asian so we can equalize everything. That's unfair to the Asian. right? And racism, positive racism and negative racism are the same thing to me. If someone look at you and say, hey, you're a black person, I should give you a head start, that's racism. Just like if someone said, hey, you're a black person, we'll give you a handicap, is racism. But because black people say, oh, I benefit from it, they allow it. No. This is why I say that this stuff, CRT, all this race referencing, is only going to cause more division in our country. But hey, I digress. Let's get back into the video.
Doing by assembling scholars and activists was not enough to challenge the intellectual framework of what 1619 did, because we believe that experience will always triumph over an argument. Therefore, what we have recruited is not only black scholars that are presenting essays to refutate the statements in 1619, but also we're bringing along activists whose lives are the embodiment of the founding principles of personal responsibility. And so to challenge this notion, we have given evidence. For instance, in 1920 to 1940, the education gap in the South between blacks and whites was 8th grade for whites, it was 5th grade for blacks. But because Julius Rosenwald, the Jewish CEO of Sears, partnered with Booker T. Washington, and Rosenwald put up $4 million, and the black community raised $4.8 million, and together this partnership, the black community built 5,000 Rosenwald schools in the Deep South.
Imagine that. Even when you think, oh, black people were poor in the 1920s and the 1940s, they were able to put up half of their money to contribute to a program that will help its community. You think black people are looking to do that today? Not many. Right? Black people now in 2023 expect the government to put up all the money. Everyone to put up all the money to help them. I'm like, yo, what benefit does another person will have? I believe in making win-win situations. Right? How do you win from investing in us? Hey, this is what we value. This is what we're gonna give back to you. Right? At least pony up half. But no, in the black community, it's like, oh, we need more education. We need more this. We need more that. Okay, are you gonna put up half? No, they should put all the money in. They should invest in us. How you want control and direction over how the funds are used when you're not having no skin in the game? And this is the problem we have in our culture right now. The black community don't want to put any skin in the game. They want everyone to take all the risk and none of the reward. It's an untenable position. This is why reparations don't work. This is why reparations will never come to the black community, because you want something for nothing. And I blame the liberals for doing that. And they use it, carry it on the stick when they need your vote. They make promises they know they ain't gonna keep. And they just look like they just go through the motions. Oh, look, we're trying for you. And that seems to be enough for the black community. But yeah, I digress.
To provide education to untutored and uneducated blacks. And as a consequence of this.
One point before I continue. During that time in the 1920s was when Black Wall Street was going on, when black people were being entrepreneurial. In my case, I think 1920s is when black people were at their best. Rising up economically, starting their own thing. Oh, you don't want us at your hotels? We'll go make our own hotels. And then the white liberals got mad and they destroyed Black Wall Street. Broad moment. Because it showed them, hey, we don't need you. We could do for ourselves. And that's the kind of the message that I want the black community to embrace again. That personal responsibility. Hey, we're accountable for ourselves. If it's meant to be, it's up to me. It's up to us. If the black community want to change, it has to be a part of that. It can't just be solely on the back seat and be like, hey, government, you give us education. You invest in our economies. You give us economic zones. When you guys are not actually trying to do anything. You just want everything given to you without any work for it. Right? You want a job, but at the same time, you don't want to put in the application. That you got to have some skin in the game. I'm sorry. Black people have to have some skin in the game if they want change in their communities. But yeah, I digress.
This effort between 1920 and 1940, just 20 years, the education gap in the South closed from 3 years to 6 months. When blacks were denied access to hotels, They built their own hotels. In every major city, there was a major hotel. In Chicago, Illinois, for instance, in 1929, in the Bronzeville section, blacks owned 731 businesses. We had $100 million in real estate assets. So all over America, in the presence of discrimination, black Americans using the instruments of the free enterprise system pooled their money together in our churches, burial societies, and capitalized their own businesses and thrived. They had black Wall Streets all over America.
Imagine that. And this just proved this notion that the black community wasn't doing well until until political power got involved. Well, black community wasn't doing anything until the 1960s. This is what I'm talking about when I said the left cherry pick history. They don't go to 1920s to 1940s before 1960s. When black people were facing the most discrimination, they were still finding a way. That proved to you, that, at least to me, that the black community don't really need politicians to do anything for them. This is why I preach this message for all of America, not just black America, all of America, that you don't need saviors. You don't need people to go out of their way. You don't need politicians to come here and make your life better. You just need the politicians and the government to get out of their way. This is why I'm for smaller government. Hey, just make sure we all abide by the same law and order. Make sure we all have the same rights. Make sure you protect our borders, right? Make sure you create a great incentive structure that strives for everyone to be independent, to do for self. And this is the message that he's preaching here. Because even in the face of where you can make the argument, we had racism, structural racism, systematic racism during the Jim Crow era, black people were still finding ways to thrive. And you telling me in 2023, black people can't do the same thing and take it up to another level when we have more education, more material wealth compared to the black people in the past? But they deal with less crime. Culturally, they had more higher self-image of themselves. Now in black community is like you only can be an athlete, rapper, right? Black communities still have high self-esteem. If you look at polls, certain surveys, black people have the highest ability of self-confidence out of all the racial groups in America. But when it comes to this, we can't do anything for ourselves, white men on our neck. Like, I don't understand this is a big disconnect I have in my head. You're the racial group with the highest self-confidence, self-esteem. Yet when it comes to, hey, do for self, I can't do anything. And this is what I'm talking about. Democrats have conditioned black people to learn to be helpless when it comes to economics, education. It's not our fault. It's because of racism is why you have lower test scores. It's because of racism that you got denied a home loan. It's because of racism that you're overwhelmingly represented in crime. It's not the fact that you choose to do crime. It's not the fact that you commit more crimes on average, more disproportional to your population. They want to remove all responsibility from black people because they want black people to be dependent on them. It's an appealing message. This is why I said that the black community has been almost, married to the fact that they can use their race as an alibi to justify all the negative consequences that they experience, to absolve themselves of any responsibility. Because to get achievement is hard. Because with achievement, you have to keep working to keep it. Achievement is due every month. You got to work hard to keep yourself at the highest level. It's easy to just sit back and say, why you're not as successful? It's because of racism. It's because America's a racist country. The white man holding me back. Right? Using your race as an alibi. That's more attractive. That's more comfortable because you don't have to work hard. You come naturally black. So you just like, it's because of my race. But when it comes to achievement, why you didn't pass this test? I didn't study, right? It's hard to admit that you did something wrong. And this is why having an alibi is so attractive. And I think this is what the black community has fallen into, the trap of having an alibi. It's because of my race. It's because of racism. And this is what it has become. This is why black people get so emotional about reparations and all the race issues, because it's been conditioned with their identity. Race and culture has been tied heavily with their identity that, hey, every black person experienced racism, even though that's not a true statement. But everyone assumes it to be true because of your skin color. which is, in my view, is another form of racism. But I digress. Let's get back into the video.
Throughout the history of this country, Black Americans have fought in every war in defense of the founding principles. And what we should celebrate is their success within the context of this system. If we're going to talk about a legacy of slavery, we should also talk about the legacy of resistance and resilience, that blacks resisted by being resilient. For instance, in 1943, there were no black naval officers. So Eleanor Roosevelt, the wife of President Roosevelt, insisted that the Navy train naval officers, blacks for naval officers. The Navy selected 16 college-educated black cadets for training.
In
But
1943.
they decided to give these black cadets in 8 weeks what they would give white cadets in 16 weeks.
Uh-oh.
And once the
Discrimination. Right? But this is like, imagine there was two cultures that the black community had. The legacy of slavery. To me, that is taught. Your parents did that to you. Right? Your parents taught you, oh, you can't do nothing because you're a black man. Oh, the police are gonna pull you over because you're black. Your parents put that in your head. That's the legacy of slavery. But that's social conditioning from those social scientists in the liberal arts. In the 1960s, 50s, they were conditioning black folks, oh, you can't do anything, right? Teaching them that they're helpless when it comes to certain things. And then this helplessness is embedded in black culture, and we teach our kids this. So when a kid walk around and something happened because they had a stink attitude or they did something, and if the other person that's retaliating or pushing back against them happens to be the wrong race, oh, you're a racist, man. You're a racist, man. That's their immediate go-to. Their immediate alibi. Oh, you. It's not because I acted badly or rude to you is why you're acting mad at me. It's because of your racism. They always have an excuse, right? And in that case, 1943, they had that excuse. Oh, white people get 16 weeks. Why do we want to get 8? What you think is going to happen? That's the conservative mindset. Like, yo, like, F it. I'm going to make the most. I'm going to do my best at this. I'm gonna prove you wrong. I bet you they succeeded, it seems like. I don't know.
black cadets found out what the Navy was about, they put blankets up over their windows and stayed up all night and studied. And when they were tested, they all scored in the 90th percentile.
Imagine that. They had less time and they still succeeded. Exactly, Base Zoomer. It becomes obvious when you look at the successful versus the unsuccessful black people. My black family is all about personal responsibility. My mom was like a hybrid Asian black mom about school. My mom was the same way. My mom taught me how to read at 5 years old. And that's a skill that I use even there today. And Frederick Douglass had a quote that's been associated with him, that if a man can read, he is forever free, right? And the point of that quote is that if you have the ability to read a book, you have the ability to teach yourself anything, right? And it followed me today. I'm always, every time I go out, I can't go to Barnes and Nobles by myself because I always come back with a book. Because in a day, the ability to self-educate yourself is a very powerful thing. This is personal responsibility. If my kids are not learning something in school, it's my responsibility to teach them. Oh, public school don't teach financial literacy. F it. I'll teach my kid financial literacy. I think the biggest problem in American culture today is we have given too much responsibility to teachers. And I think parents need to start taking some of that responsibility back, right? Teaching morality, teaching values, right? Teaching things that's in the private life, such as how to deal with the opposite sex, maybe, how to manage a budget, financial literacy, politics. I think all those things, the parents should take back control of those responsibilities back for their kids. And the teacher's job, teach reading, writing, arithmetic. That's it. Teaching sex, education, all this stuff, all those personal stuff, leave that to the parents. I think we need to go back to that. I think this is why our culture is degraded or degenerated such a degree, is because we have given too much responsibility and control to the teachers. And this is why you see this big push from conservatives to homeschool their kids, because we have absolved too much responsibility to the teachers, and that gave them too much control, especially when the government is subsidizing or funding a lot of all the public schools. So essentially you hand off education to the state, to the government. And then you get surprised when the government decide, hey, this is what your kids will learn. You're surprised when the Democrats say, oh, when Democrat politicians said, "Oh, parents have no rights to dictate what's taught in school," because they think, "Hey, they're our kids. They're not your kids. They're our kids. They're our kids just as much as they're your kids." Joe Biden. That's a quote from Joe Biden. And now it's a fight for our future because end of the day, Adolf Hitler. I'm sorry if I said his name. Adolf said it best. He said, "He who controls the children controls the future." And this is the cultural battle that we're having today. But I digress.
Well, the Navy, believing that they had cheated, tested them individually. The second time they scored in the 93rd percentile. And after a few months of hesitation, 13 of them were made officers for the first time. To this day, the scores of these cadets set a record at the academy.
Imagine that. No handouts, no special help, no special policies to put them into schools. Oh, no affirmative action. Nah, they was given an opportunity and they made the most of their opportunity. To me, there's a history. There's a template that shows that Black Americans have had the capability and demonstrated in the past that they were able to rise themselves out of negative situations or negative environments. Do for self. Do for yourself. The Black community needs to look at itself and say, "Hey, what we can do different to change the outcomes that we're experiencing today." And I think if Black community was able to look inward and say, "Hey, I can't control who becomes president. We're only 13% of the population, but I can control, hey, what we're taught as a culture, what we teach our kids, what we teach future generations, and how can we set them up for a better position." This is how we got the civil rights movement. This is how Blacks today have more rights than Blacks did in the past, because that's what the Black community culture used to teach. That's what Martin Luther King used to be about. I have a dream that my kids will not be judged by the color of their skin, but the content of their character. There was a vision for the future. And right now in the current Black generation, Black community, I don't think we have that anymore. I think we have hey, what's in it for me? What can I benefit from this political party? Damn, if it affects the future generation, I need to get a check right now. Oh, I want a stimulus check. I want a $1.2 million reparations check. I don't care if it causes inflation or it makes life harder for future generations of Black. I benefited from it now. And I think that's what we lost in our Black community. And this is why I'm talking about a shared culture. Ask not what the country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. We have lost that. We have become too self-centered in a way. Our culture has made us value vice more than virtue. And that's why I believe I agree with Woodson here. It's not a crisis of outcomes. It's not a crisis of racism. It's a crisis of values. We don't have the same values. We don't have values that makes us strive for the betterment of our country, our community, and in effect, ourselves. Because if it's harder to live in America, it hurts us inadvertently. You could benefit on the short term, but in the long term, you hurt yourself. Just like welfare. Black women benefited in the short term, but the future Black women suffered in the long term because now what? Higher rates of crime, lower propensity to be poor, because married people are less likely to be poor than single people. It's a fact. So if the Asian community is 70% married and the Black community is 70% single, is it any surprise both these people, one community is poor and the other one's richer? On average, Asian people have higher incomes than any other racial group in America right now. And that's because they have a certain pattern that leads themselves to success. And people who do these patterns tend to be more successful than people who don't do these patterns. And it's not racism that causes these disparities. The Black community chose, hey, high rates of single motherhood, right? Higher rates of poverty. Asian communities, higher percentages of married couples, less propensity to be poor. In my head, I always thought this. Have I ever seen a poor Asian before? I mean, it's possible. You run into certain cases, but it's hard to think that. At least the poorest Asian you see is like low middle class. But you never seen she's poor, she's poverty, she's on welfare. I never seen that image. I'm sure it happens, but it's hard to imagine that. Imagine a poor Asian. Imagine that. Imagine it right now. You can't. But if I ask you, imagine a poor Black woman, it's easy. You're like, oh yeah, I remember this lady. She had 7 kids, all of them raggedy, ripped jeans, shoes were talking. You can picture that in your head. Because it's so rampant. It's not as frequent in the Asian community as it is in the Black community. And then you're surprised, and that's why people are not surprised when black community is poor, because they made decisions that set them up for those outcomes. It's rare for a single mom to be rich, successful, have everything going, making six figures and this and that. It's rare for that to happen. I'm sure there's cases of that happening, but they're the exception, not the rule. The rule is, hey, most single moms are poor, dependent on the government, and their kids are exposed to high rates of crime, low performing schools, because end of the day, poverty or poor area, the school won't have much taxes to actually generate its schools. And this is one of the arguments that Democrats will use. Oh, we need more taxes to fund these schools so that way they can better adequately help these students. But there's also cultural issues in public schools as well, because they don't want to discipline their students, because it tends to be that black kids causes disturbance in the classroom. And because black kids start causing disturbance in the in the school system, they tend to get suspended more than other racial groups. So then people go, oh, racism. And this is where I'm talking about the alibi come out again. Oh, you're suspending my kid because of racism. But your kid was talking in class, disturbing the whole class, stopping all the other kids from learning. No. Don't hold my kid accountable. He's black. And this is where you get to this case where we're dealing with black people today. We treat black people today like children. They can't take bad news. Don't tell them bad news. Don't tell them it's their fault. Just put them in the corner somewhere. And this is what's going on in our culture. We're infantilizing black people just like we're infantilizing women. Oh, they can't take criticism. Don't criticize them. Don't do it. And I find it insulting, honestly. But I digress.
Because they have the highest record, highest score in the history of the Naval Training Academy. Another example from history that we're presenting is a man named Robert Smalls, who was born in 1839 in Sumter, North Carolina. He was a slave working on a ship. And one night when his masters went to leave, one night when they left the ship, he commandeered the ship, and along with his 5 other crewmen, they sneaked out of the port, picked up their families, and put their master's hat on, and waved and went past 5 different garrisons and turned this supply ship over to the Union Navy. Well, Robert Smalls was celebrated throughout the country, and as a consequence of his heroic actions, Lincoln admitted blacks in to fight for the Union Army.
Imagine that. Black people created their own opportunities. They didn't sit around waiting for the government or someone else to do something for them. And this is the message I've been preaching, man. Extreme ownership. Like, we got to own, like, we got to look at each other and be like, yo, we got to fix it. We can't sit around, because in the day, the more degrees of separation, like when you wait for other people, that's another degree of separation. Do what you can today. Don't worry about things you can't control. I can't control what happens to me. I can control how I respond. How are black people going to respond? They don't think like this. Their response is, do something. Somebody got to do something. Someone got to help us. When all they need is right here. All you need is each other right here. And I think that's a message we lost. Like, imagine this. This guy he wasn't prompted on his own initiative. He's like, yo, I'm going to help the union because they're trying to free us. They're trying to give us equal rights in this country. And because of that, Lincoln said, yo, we can use these people. And I think Booker T said it best, that if you teach a man how to have knowledge, skill, if you make a man valuable, eventually society will respect him. And I think that's what the black community has lost. It's lost its ability to increase its human capital. Because I bet you if black community was as educated as the Asian community, I think we'll have more respect in this country. That's all I'm trying to say. Because it's hard for a people that don't have a lot of skills, or skills that are valuable in a country, in a culture or in a country, to demand respect. Because people are like, yo, we don't gain anything and we don't lose anything for not having you participate. And that's all I'm trying to say. I'm not saying black people are lazy. I'm not saying none of that. I'm just saying black people need to get more competitive. They need to get more active. They need to strive for things that matter. Like, if you complain about economic opportunities, how about you go out and create them? How about you start a business and try to employ your own people? And I think this is the message a lot of people who believe in personal responsibility are trying to push, or trying to tell the black community that they can do it. They don't have to sit around waiting for a government handout. So, hey, I digress, man. Like, end of the day, like I said, if they can feed you, they can starve you. If they provide you the service, they can take it away. If the government give you free healthcare, they can determine how that healthcare is used. If I say, hey, you gotta, if I give a stipulation, hey, you gotta vote, you gotta do, what's an example? COVID vaccine. You gotta give your kids the COVID vaccine, or else you don't qualify for Medicare. A black human have no leverage because they're like, yo, I need healthcare. So, kid, you're gonna get the COVID vaccine because we need that healthcare. We need that healthcare. The government can make you do anything because they're like, oh, I can hold this service over your head. And this is why I'm not a fan of welfare, because this is where I'm talking about where it makes the government dependent on you. If you're not responsible for it, you don't have any authority over it. Right? And there was a case that happened in the UK, and then after this, I'll continue with the video. In the UK, there was a kid that was taken off of life support because the parent, obviously, it was free healthcare over there in UK. The government thought, hey, there's no point. The kid won't survive this. There's not a likelihood he's gonna come out of this coma. Unplug him. And the parents were fighting desperately. No, don't kill my kid. Don't take him off life support. But they had no say in it because they wasn't providing the healthcare. The government was. And the government was like, yo, it's more cost effective if we let the child die. The child don't have, the doctor says the child doesn't have a high probability of waking up from the coma anyway, so just unplug them. The parents were fighting desperately. The parents filed a lawsuit against the federal government so they can transfer their kid to Italy, I believe. And the Italy was even giving the kid citizenship so they can transfer over the kid over in Italy. But no, the government decided it was better for the kid to die than for him to continue living in Italy. Bruh, this is what happened when you get free healthcare. All you did was, hey, I don't want to be responsible for my own healthcare. I want the government to be responsible for my healthcare. But then the government also has authority over your treatment as well. So if the government think, hey, you're 82 years old, there's no point in trying to extend your life. You're not really adding any value to the government. Nah, we're not going to cover you. What you going to say? You have nothing. You have no leverage because the government provides everything for you. So the government has authority over you. And this is the case I'm trying to avoid. This is why I'm in favor of privatized institutions, privatized healthcare, privatized schooling, privatize everything. Because yeah, you have to pay for it, but hey, I think it's a lot better product, and you have a lot more control and authority over what's going on because you have some skin in the game. But yeah, I digress. Let's get back into the video.
Well, after the war, Robert Smalls became a successful businessman and got elected to the Congress during Reconstruction. And he went back and purchased the plantation on which he was a slave. And because
yeah, Base Zoomer is true. Yeah, I would want, like, in my head, when I think about privatized healthcare, communities used to be able to unionize around that case, right? And they had a lot more direct control, direct access. They had about, oh, what's more beneficial for me? And I think honestly, I think we need to get back to communal healthcare again. Like, at least healthcare should not be tied to employment. I think it should operate more like car insurance. But hey, I digress. Let's get back into it. And I wish your husband luck. I hope you guys find a way to sustain yourselves. I'll keep you in my prayers. All right. Let's continue with the video.
The family of the slave master had become destitute. In an act of radical grace, he took in the wife and children of the slave master and even allowed her to remain in the master bedroom, as she had become delusional and didn't realize that the war was over. And I think that's a marvelous story of the resilience of Black Americans to thrive and achieve against the odds.
I know I keep pausing the video, but every time he speaks, it just awakens in me, like, we could have had a more balanced view of Black history, because what's taught in these public schools, and in my view, public schools is a liberal hellhole because most of the teachers are Democrats, right? Liberal, overwhelmingly contributes to the Democratic Party, overwhelmingly votes Democrat. When Black History Month come around, all we hear is nothing good ever happened until Martin Luther King and them voted for Democrats. That's the only narrative you're going to hear in Black History Month in public schools. In my private school, thank God, I learned about Booker T. Washington. I learned about Frederick Douglass, George Washington Carter, right? Because my school is talking about Black excellence, and they represent Black excellence to me, right? I'm like, oh, whoa, we wasn't just all just slaves, victims. until the white man decided to be nice to us and help us. Oh, we were actually doing it for ourselves. We actually created businesses for ourselves. The first politicians in to participate in politics were Republicans, black Republicans. Oh, I didn't know. Bro, your eyes are awake. Now, I learned this in 3rd grade for me, but public school kids, they don't get this education. And some of it was me learning for myself, because if it wasn't for this, and I'm talking to my own self. Hey, Abby, how are you? If my teachers didn't put this stipulation, hey, you guys are not allowed to talk about Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, all the popular Rosa Parks. You got to go find other black individuals for Black History Month. And then I did a report on Frederick Douglass. I was like, oh, shoot. I know. Oh, okay. Freedom is something you fight for. That's a Frederick Douglass quote. I was like, oh, damn. I learned about George Washington Carter. That's how I learned about Booker T. Washington, the Tiki Institute, educating black community to help them rise up and catch up to the education gap. Those stories are inspirational. It drives that, oh, we can do it for ourselves. But no, the Democrats want the black community to feed into this narrative of learned helplessness. They want black community to be helpless. Hey, you can't do nothing for yourself. You need us. This is why when the black community hear Republicans or black conservatives telling people, hey, vote Republicans, they go, oh, what you gonna get out of it? What we gonna get out of it? You're gonna get the opportunity to try, opportunity to control your own fate, to be the master of your own ship. That's the opportunity you get from when you vote Republican. The Republicans aren't trying to give you anything they're not going to give everyone else. The Republicans treat everyone as equal. They have a general policy and everyone benefits from it. It's just you have to be willing to take advantage of those things. But no, black people have been conditioned, and this is not their fault of their own. They've been conditioned to sit back and be like, hey, give us handouts. Do something directly for us. We don't want any skin in the game. Invest in our education. We don't want to put up half like in the Republican Party. The Republican Party is too much work. But in my view, in the long term, future generations of black people will benefit from that if black community started voting more Republican, because there'll be more black business owners, right? More entrepreneurial. Like, end of the day, small businesses employ 60% of all jobs in this economy. So I don't understand why we're not trying to incentivize black people to be more in business for themselves, especially if they think there's a racial bias against them in corporate America. But hey, we've been conditioned to see ourselves as victims in all cases, even when we're directly responsible for the negative outcome. But I digress. Let's get back into the video.
To be born a slave and through the free enterprise system, earn enough money to come back and actually purchase a plantation in which he was a slave, and exhibited the kind of radical grace that enabled him to take in and care for the family of the slave master.
Wow.
And so
how many black people you think will be able to do that? Nope. They'll be like, oh. Like right now, people get mad about suffering that they never personally experienced, right? They'll get mad at behalf of slave owners. Oh, slaves, this is white people. They're the devils in this country. But a person that actually was a slave had enough kindness to take care of his slave owner without doing anything because he had pity on her. That type of moral, I guess, conviction. Like, imagine he will be justified to do any unspeakable evil on this lady because she was cuckoo. She didn't know, she had no self-awareness. But no, he's like, no, I'm not that person, because the way you beat somebody is not to be like them. And that's a level of character I think the black community can aspire to emulate, especially in today, especially with this reparations. Oh, the world owed me everything because I'm a descendant of a slave, not because I faced slavery, not because I've actually been through slave. No, because I'm a descendant of slave, I deserve reparations. Get out of here. To me, reparations is today, like, no one's 400 years old, no one's 200 years old, no one alive, no black person alive today has experienced slavery. None. So you shouldn't be benefiting off of slavery. You should be benefiting off the suffering of your ancestors. To me, that's a moral, intangible position. How are you going to suffer from a whip you didn't took? How are you going to benefit from a cotton you never picked? From people who never been slave owners to begin with? You can't make this argument up. And then they get mad when what's his name? Gavin Newsom's like, no, I'm not gonna do anything for you guys. Especially, and he has no incentive to. Whether Gavin Newsom gives black Californians, reparations or not, they're still going to vote for him 90%. You got no leverage. So, but I digress.
Are taking these experiences that are ignored and overlooked by 1619 and presenting these as evidence that America should not ever be defined by its birth defect of slavery, but it should be defined by the promise that it held. And that's why people of color from all over the world are risking their lives to get here. And so it is important because the message that is coming from liberal, radical, leftists, and the Black Lives Matter movement is really sending a very dangerous message to not only blacks but whites. And what the message that is being sent to blacks is that they are defined by slavery and discrimination, and therefore, if white America doesn't change, it is difficult, impossible for blacks to change. That's making an assumption that blacks have no agency and therefore are totally dependent. So, but our society is at a crossroads right now, where race is dominating everything. Contracts between law firms now require that companies sign on to the race grievance training. School systems are being taught history that America is defined by slavery.
That's just a narrative. Like, that's not true. You're defining a country by a certain narrative. You cherry picking history and saying, oh, this is what it's really about. Nothing didn't start getting good for black folks until 1960s. But he's naming you example after example of things that led up to this point before 1960s. Before 1960s, black community economic trajectory was going like this. And then during the 1960s, 64, 65, it was still going up, but it was slightly starting to come down. And the next thing you know, in the 80s, boom, off a cliff. Because welfare incentivized single motherhood, destroying the nuclear family. So the kids weren't getting this culture of hard work, providing for yourself. They were growing up in poverty, right? And then you got the war on drugs and all this other stuff. And it became a combination of all these factors that led into our culture today, where it's not cool to be a smart kid. It's not cool to try to strive to be an intellectual or be an engineer, especially as a black man, apparently. Right? You get called names. In a culture that disincentivizes its people to be smart and competent individuals in society, of course you're going to limit your economic opportunities. There's more probability that you become an engineer than you becoming an MBA or a rapper in this country or in the world. Imagine that. So you're disincentivizing your people from going down a path of a high probability of success for a low probability of success, because that's what black people do. And this is the problem I have in our culture, in our education system. And then when you fight back against this stuff and say, hey, no, America's not a racist country. Show me how America's a racist country. You go back all the way to 18 something. And I'm like, yo, we're in 2023. Where in 2023 does the same thing happen in 18 something? You talking about when people bring up instances of where black people attack white people and say, oh, well, like there was a case where two black men killed a white guy because he was a white guy. People will say, oh, well, back in the day, white people used to lynch us. Lynch you? What do you mean lynch you? You wasn't born in 18 something. You were born in 19 something. Like, it's crazy how we go all the way back in the past when you didn't personally go through any lynching. Name me a current instance of lynching that happened lately in America. You can't name none. Now, we do interracial crime. Sure, crime happens to everybody. But to use the fact that when black people do bad behavior or do an action that requires accountability, you justify that action. Oh, don't demonize them. Don't hold them accountable. It's because of poverty. It's because of legacy of slavery. There goes that alibi again. And this is what it's become intoxicating for black communities, that they feel so important. They love the fact that they can use their race as an alibi. That's going to be hard to give up from an emotional standpoint. Short term, it may benefit them, but to me, in the long term, it's hurting the black community. And that's just my thoughts. You guys can agree, disagree. Let me know in the comment section if you're watching this on the replay. But I digress. Let's get back into the video.
And so our culture is being polluted by this notion that America is defined by slavery and that it is an exploitative nation, that capitalism is to be disavowed.
That's why Marxism
The
is so
Black
popular in the
Lives
black
Matter
community.
movement promotes itself as being seeking social justice in wake of George Floyd being murdered or killed by the police. But what they have done is hijacked the civil rights movement and migrated it from justice for blacks to burning Bibles in Portland to attempting to desecrate World War II memorials.
And then imagine this: the Black Lives Matter movement is such a destructive movement that it destroyed black businesses and essentially caused more damage to the black community than it actually stand to promote and help. Because you have these people who are just unaccountable for themselves, and they'll be like, oh, because one black man died. Everyone used that as a pretext to go loot, steal TVs, destroy property. And then they get mad when businesses move out of their city. And they're like, oh, you're leaving us economically starved. No, you did it to yourselves. Two-way street, remember? You need some skin in the game. One skin in the game is take care of the businesses that you have in your community. But instead, no, you get emotional. Use the fact that a black man unfortunately died at the hands of police, right? But he wasn't innocent in the interaction either. But hey, two wrongs don't make it right? Come out, destroy a whole community because of that instance, and then you're surprised when no businesses want to come into your community. Because end of the day, black people currently have this image where you can't hold black people accountable anymore. You can't call out bad behavior in the black community anymore. Because if you do, and you happen to be the wrong color, you're racist. And that's why I'm saying that alibi, it may benefit you in the short term, but in the long term, it'll hurt you. Because when people are starting to say, like, what's his name? I forgot his name. Scott Adams say, hey, stay away from them. You take that as racist, but on a poll where it says, is it okay to be white? Like a large percentage of black people said they're not sure or no, it's not okay to be white. But if if a different poll came out saying, is it okay to be black? And only 53% of white people said it was okay to be black. A lot of black people will be like, oh, racism. See, this proves racism exists. It's because black people don't want to follow the same rules and standards as everyone else. They want special treatment. This is the alibi I'm talking about. And this is why racial referencing is dividing America. I don't think America can get better until we all have a common culture, until we all can come together and say, hey, we're all American here. We all have the same vetted interests. We want America to be the best that it can be. Until we have that common foundation, I think we're going to keep running into this circle where we keep fighting, debating, we're more susceptible to tribal politics. White man killed black man. It don't matter if the black man was at fault. It don't matter if the black man was threatening everyone in the train station. A white man kill him. A white man has no right to do that. A white man has no right to interfere with black people. And it becomes tribalism. It doesn't matter if the black person was actually in the wrong and the white person was the victim and he was just trying to defend himself and other people in the train. I'm talking about the Daniel Penny situation with the homeless man, Jordan Neely. This is how you get those instances. Judge a man by the context of his character, not the color of his skin. We're not doing that anymore. Based on character, the homeless man was in the wrong. He was threatening people. He was doing this. He was threatening people. He assaulted a 70-year-old woman. He had 40 counts of 40 charges on him. He never got charged for any of them. He got arrested 40 times, so 40 plus times. He wasn't supposed to be on the street, but he was there, threatening people. Then Jordan Neely stopped him with two other men, but because Daniel, the guy the Marine who choked him out, happened to be white. Oh, it fit the narrative. White man killed black man. Tribalism politics. We're judging people based on the color of their skin, not the content of their character. I mean, this is what I'm talking about. Like, until we start unifying each other, say, hey, we're on one banner, we're on one team, guys, one team. This stuff's gonna keep happening, and I think establishment media stokes the flames of stuff like this. They keep trying to push this narrative, even though there's more cases of black people committing crimes against other groups of people. Asian people, black people, interracial crimes, black people are the biggest perpetrators of those across all the boards. Hispanic, white, Asian, Black people are the main perpetrators of interracial crime, which they would have perceived as a hate crime. If a white criminal attacks a black victim, they'll perceive that as a hate crime when black people are more guilty of it than any other group of people in America. And there's more black on white crime than there is white on black crime. It's inconceivable. But this is what happens when you judge people on the color of their skin, when you have a racial standard. Oh, it's only a hate crime when a white person does it to a black person. When we start doing that, we cause more division, because then what's going to stop white people from being like, I don't want to associate with black people anymore because they're not held to a similar standard as me. And no matter what I do, I'm always at fault. So why be around them? I mean, black people are going to end up isolating themselves if this keeps going on. But hey, I digress.
Taking down statues not of Southern generals, but of luminaries like Frederick Douglass. And so there really is a crisis in America where the radical left is using race and America's birth defect as a bludgeon.
And slavery was done all around the world, right? And this idea that, oh, America was only rich because of slavery, then you have to say that Brazil should be the richest country in the world because they had slavery longer than America had slavery, yet they're still poorer than America. So it throws this notion that slavery is the reason why America was so wealthy to begin with. And most millionaires and billionaires are self-made. It's rare that a millionaire and billionaire are achieve their wealth through generational means. But yeah, I digress.
To tear apart this nation. And so what we believe that should happen as a defense of this nation is that the majority of low-income blacks who are suffering the most in this turmoil that they are also the greatest allies in the restoration of this nation. I think there's a myth that the so-called spokespersons for Black Americans speaks for the everyday Black American. It's just not true. Many of those who command the microphones
Al Sharpton
and are on the talk shows supposed to be representative of the poor. Many of these leaders are against the police. 80% of the Black Americans supports more police in communities. There's always been a bifurcation between the interests of so-called spokesperson and low-income people. For instance, on the issue of vouchers and choice in education.
School choice, yep. Like school choice is a better policy for black people. If you just look specifically, if I put my pro-black hat on, school choice is a better option for Black Americans, is because Black Americans tend to be in low-income areas which has low funding, right? And the quality of school, the culture surrounding the school, right, is not inducive of learning, of high-level learning, right? There's a reason why kids from single-parent households commit more crimes. They do worse in school. Minorities do worse in public school. Out of all the schooling options, Black kids do worse. Minority students do worse in public school. So with school choice, these students will have an ability to go into other school options that are better for them, aka not public school. Charter schools are overwhelmingly, like, minority students overwhelmingly perform well in charter schools. Right? There's even cases where they pick a group of kids from public school and next year move them into charter school, and they saw a significant increase in their academic achievements. And a lot of the cases is due to the fact that in charter schools, there's standards. There's a level, hey, you have to have a certain GPA or you get kicked out. There's a consequence for not performing. In that performance, those kids rise up to those standards instead of the bigotry of low expectation. Oh, you're a Black kid, we're not going to hold you accountable for anything. And this is why Black kids get away with more acting out in class. And there's studies saying that one class that has more disturbances during the course of the learning than another class tend to perform well on tests, because the kids don't lose any time learning. When there's a disturbance in the class, kids lose. Oh, we get distracted. The teacher has to take away from the lesson to correct the kid or somehow get the class in order. That disrupts the learning of everyone else. And that shows in the greater results. And in public school, that tends to happen more than charter schools and private schools, because public schools have policies in place where they can't suspend kids for acting out in class because it disproportionately affect black people, therefore it's racist. And this is what happens when you have feelings over facts. End of the day, we should all abide by the same rules. And if it so happens that black people tend to break the rules more, hey, it's better to correct them now than later, right? If you show me two kids, one kid get corrected on his mistakes and another kid don't get corrected on his mistakes, who's going to be the worse off kid? The kid whose actions don't get corrected. And that's what's happening to black people right now. The bigotry of low expectations. I digress. Let's get back into the video.
Only 8% of the so-called civil rights leadership supports vouchers. 65 to 70% of low-income blacks support vouchers.
There's a disconnect. There's a conflict of interest. Because Al Sharpton and them, they get a lot of money telling black people to vote Democrat. People have to acknowledge that conflict of interest. And they still look at these people as leaders. This is why I say black liberals are not pro-black. Black liberals are pro-Democrat. And all they care about is black people continue voting for Democrats, regardless if it actually benefits them as a community or not. But hey, I digress.
And this is true. For instance, in Florida, the 2018 election, gubernatorial election, where DeSantis ran against Gillum, the liberal black former mayor of Tampa, the margin of victory was 32,000 votes.
I remember voting in that election.
And that's because 100,000 low-income blacks voted for the Republican DeSantis because of his position on school choice and vouchers in education. Even though Gillum brought into campaign for him ex-President Obama and Oprah Winfrey.
Yep.
Even with Oprah Winfrey and Obama coming to campaign for the black candidate, 100,000 low-income blacks voted the other way because they put the interests of...
Hey, I'm telling you now, in Florida, like, we're independents for real. Like, we're a very moderate swing state, right? We lean right, we lean left sometimes. But one thing we don't play about our kids, our family. Yo, I'm saying, like, now, still in Florida, majority of the black people still vote Democrat, but I'm saying, like, a lot of people in Florida can recognize, hey, this stuff ain't working. And I think this is why we've been voting Republican lately, is because we're just for common sense. We're just for sanity. And if the Democrats keep trying to push this progressive thing, I guess Florida's going to stay a red state for a long time. But yeah, I digress.
Of their children's education ahead of race. And I think that is an opening, and you're going to see the same divide as you take specific issues into communities. After all, many of those who are advocating the defunding of the police do not live in neighborhoods that have high crime rates.
Exactly. Like these black victimcrats, as Larry Elder likes to call them. Rich black Democrats, they don't live in the hood. Black people in the hood need the police. Because like I said, just like black men are disproportionately represented in crime because they commit more crime, black on black crime is 5 times more likely than other racial crimes in a group. Right? If Hispanic people kill each other at 100 times a year, black people kill each other at 500 times a year. And black people are disproportionately represented as victims. And most of those crimes are due to another black person. So who needs the police more? Black people. Obvious conclusion. But what they're pushing out in the Democratic platform, there needs to be less policing. Defund the police. What he said has weight. There's a disconnect there between what the black liberal establishment says, oh, this is what black people need, a narrative, versus what in reality what they actually need, what actually is going to give them a good outcome and address the issues that they're dealing with in their communities, or at least help mitigate it a bit. But yeah, I digress.
Many of them live in gated communities, and therefore they don't have to suffer the consequences of their advocacy. What is it they're trying to do? Because they have no solutions. All they're talking about is what they're against.
Yep.
What they want to abolish.
Yep.
What they want to deconstruct.
That's all they want to do.
They offer no remedies.
Just destroy the old system, and we're just going to create something new on top of it. And then what? Reinvent the wheel? redo mistakes that we learned from years ago when we have something working right now. We just need to adjust it and tweak it. I'm rather reform something to destroy something and then try to start from scratch. I think a lot of people will be in agreement of this. You keep the good and you work on the bad, or you improve on what could be better. But no, they just care about, no, the whole system is wrong. This is why they keep focusing on systematic racism, or claim that systematic racism exists and said that America was founded on racism. So they're justified in deconstructing America. Oh, it shouldn't be a constitutional republic anymore. It should just be a democracy. Threat to our democracy. Every time I hear democracy, I think power. Threat to our power. Every time a Democrat says threat to my democracy, think of this is a threat to our power. Every time. And it makes more sense when they open their mouth and say, oh, this affects our democracy. I'm like, no, it only affects you. Oh, you vote Republicans, a threat to democracy. Oh, it's a threat to our power. That's pretty much what a Democrat is saying. But I digress.
They are saying that the problem of Black America is institutional racism. My challenge to them is that what does that mean?
Uh-oh.
Give me an example of institutional racism.
Uh-oh.
And then I want to know what remedy would they apply, and then how would that remedy stop, for instance, the hemorrhage of black-on-black death in the inner city?
Exactly. They don't care about no black on black. Look, Black Lives Matter don't care about black lives for real. They only care about black lives when it's taken by someone non-black. That's it. Especially if it's a white dude. That's all they care about. That's why Black Lives Matter sorry. This is why they protested immediately when the Jordan Neely guy, when they found out who killed him. Oh, it was a white dude, white Marine. Oh, protesting. But they never had that same level of fire, that same level of determination and passion when a gang opened fires on a neighborhood and kill a random black kid on the street. You'd think they'll be more fired up for that than they are for the other one. But no, it's because there's a narrative they want to perpetuate. And that's what they're doing. Because the left believe if they repeat something over and over and over again, eventually people will believe them. And this is why it's important that people like me and other conservatives speak out and show examples of, hey, it's not just this. Hey, look at the evidence. Only 1,300 people died at the hands of cops, police shooting. 9% of them are white. Only 4% was black. That means more white people die at the hands of cops than police, but then black people. But there's this narrative that only black people get shot by police, unarmed. Narrative. It's all about narrative. That's all the left care about. The left don't care about being right. They care about having the popular narrative. That's it. One seeking truth, one seeking a dogma and getting everyone to believe their perception. That's all I'm breaking down. So the last 2 minutes is going to be Robert's, and then I'll give my final thoughts at the end.
How would it reduce drug addictions among vulnerable populations living in our inner cities? So one of the ways that America can be restored is that we mobilize within low-income neighborhoods those people that stand to lose the most. Because now what the left is saying to Black America, that you are exempt from any personal responsibility for control of your life, that you can never be agents of your own uplift, that the bourgeois values of hard work,
Marxism,
sacrifice, delayed gratification are somehow associated
with whiteness,
with colonialism or white suppression, and therefore to be legitimately black, you must abandon the bourgeois values that enabled Frederick Douglass and many of those who came before us in the past, who successfully fought against racial discrimination and oppression by building their own schools, building their own mental hospitals, hotels, educational systems. So the true liberators of this country will be those in whose name Black Lives Matter have defamed by their actions.
Yep.
The Golden 13 example and the example of the life of Robert Small are just a few examples of what I call radical grace in action. And they really exemplify the best that is America. We must come together.
I agree, man.
And deracialize race.
Exactly.
And desegregate poverty.
Exactly.
And try to assist all Americans to be the best that we can be. Thank you.
It's sad that we didn't know about this guy until the Dr. Phil episode when he was going against those reparation crazy bat people. I'm mad at myself. I said, damn, how I don't know about this guy? Civil rights activist, Woodson. He's part of the Woodson Center. I believe he created the Woodson Center. And it's insane to me, right? And everything he talked about is like, damn, like, why we don't get this version of events, right? This is why I'm starting to agree with people who said, hey, maybe we need to teach a patriotic vision of school. Like when Ron DeSantis, they want to criticize Ron DeSantis for trying to push a patriotic education on but that's the point. That's what a nation should do. A nation should imbue its children that it's teaching, especially when the parents are not paying for the education. It should imbue in the education a sense of belonging to the nation, a sense of loyalty, a sense of national pride. That's in every country's right. Because you think you can go to China and disparage China? Oh, you're a racist country, China. You think that's going to stand? No, because it seems like the left only respect force. They don't respect values. They don't respect principles. They only respect force. It's not until you threaten them with bodily harm that they actually fall in line. Oh, we're sorry. Because the left only seem to respect power. Not being consistent, not principles, no values. The only thing they care about is power, and whatever gives them power is what they'll use. A Democrat will lie straight in your face if it means they will win an election. And that's what I've been trying to tell black people every day. But they don't listen. I say, hey, you're never going to get reparations. Because what incentive does the Democrat Party have to actually give you reparations when if they don't do nothing, they get 90% of your vote? They're guaranteed to get 90% of your vote. What leverage do you have? You have not even shown a willingness to go to the Republican Party. And because black community has not shown any willingness to vote Republican, they're surprised that the Republican Party don't want to make an effort to get their vote. With the Hispanics, it's 40-60. So Republicans like, oh, I have a chance with these people. So let me market to them more. This is why there's such a fight to market to the Hispanic people. Even though they've been here less than the black people. Black people have been in this country for what, 50 something years? And it's been stagnant. Now, Hispanics soon in the next 5-10 years, they're going to be the second largest population in America. That comes with a lot of power. And if black people weren't aborting their kids at a 40% rate, because there's 1 million abortions that happen per year, 40% of those are black babies. That means there's 400,000 black babies that gets aborted every single year. In New York, a black woman is more likely to abort her baby than give birth to it. And you wonder why the black community has been at 13% of the population for a while. Stagnant community growth. And now Hispanic people that only been here like relatively shorter than the black community. Right now we're about we're about the same level, 12-13%. In a couple of years, people project the Hispanic people are going to have more population than the black community. And the black community is going to lose its leverage. Because back in the day, in the 1960s, we were the only racial group we were the second largest racial group in America. So this is why the Democrats are like, oh, I'm going to have these N-words, vote for Democrat for the next 200 years, get them dependent on the government handouts, aka war on poverty. Lyndon B. Johnson said this. So that way they'll win. Because there was 50-50 with the white folks. Oh, let's get the black vote. Now that strategy, that tired out playbook of the black community is done now. Because now we have other racial groups in the country now. We got Hispanics, we got Asians. The Democrat Party don't have to cater to you anymore. And I think when the black community finally realized that, hey, I don't have any political leverage anymore, it'll already be too late. They'll be already out of politics. This is why I said do for yourself. Because at least economic success is not tied to political power. Japanese people, Asian people, Chinese people, they were able to have great economic success without being involved politically. It's just now that Asian people are trying to be represented in politics. But Asian people wasn't struggling in this country. But for some reason, black people have this backwards idea that they need politics to be successful economically. No. Change starts from the bottom up, not the top down. But hey, I digress. I've been rambling too long. I wanted to let you guys go. I appreciate you all guys for coming out. Don't forget to like the video. Don't forget to leave some comments. Leave me your thoughts about how the stream went. I know I kind of crashed in the middle of the stream. Sorry about that. It's crazy. And yes, it is a victim mindset. I'll hang around for the chats a little bit and talk with you guys. But if not, I'll just wrap it up soon. If you love America, it's pretty mean for them to say that China prosecutes Christians awfully. Thank you, Kenny. I joined late. It's fine. You just catch it on replay, Abby. It's fine. Because Black lives don't matter. They never have to Democrats who have always viewed black as less than human, lacking. No, I think Democrats see it as, hey, there's a game. Hey, all I have to do is pander to these group of people. I don't actually have to do anything for these people. I just have to do the bare minimum, aka keep them dependent on government welfare, and I'm guaranteed to get their vote, which is what's happening. And black conservatives have been pointing this out for decades, for centuries, that, hey, black community, the Democrats have no incentive to actually create any change for you, because all they have to do is say nice things and you vote like a singer, and then you vote for them 90% clip. And then you have such a disdain for Republicans because you think they don't like you or they have nothing for you, that you have openly say, oh, I don't like that. I don't like Republicans. Republicans can win the election with or without the black vote. I'm just saying, hey, black people, to get the Democrats to actually compete and bring in new policies, you have to make them compete for your vote. And the only way they're going to compete for their vote is when they see, damn, we lost 20% of the black vote to the Republican Party. That's when they're going to wake up and actually do something. But if you don't show but that all starts from here. You have control over that. You have control of who you vote for. If you don't create an incentive for the Democratic Party to change, they won't change. You have to assume politicians' main objective is to get reelected. And as long as you're not doing anything that doesn't affect their ability to get reelected, you're not going to get any actual change or different approaches or new solutions to these problems. All you're going to get is lip service, good feel good stuff, bare minimum stuff like making Juneteenth a holiday. What's that going to do for you? How's that helping you with your gas prices? How's that helping you with inflation, rising cost? How's that helping you? Nothing. It just make you feel better about yourself. But hey, I digress. I hope you all guys are having a wonderful night. I hope you guys have a good weekend. And for all the mothers out there, happy Mother's Day. I hope everyone has a blessed week, and I'll see you guys on next week's stream. Peace.